Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Rob Langrick, Chief Product Advocate for CFA Institute, and very excited to be here today. But before we start introducing the panelists, I did want to say a few words for a couple of minutes about the CIPM designation. It is the world's only credential for performance measurement, CIPM, which is Certificate in Investment Performance Measurement. And when you think about it, the CFA program is all about delivering the inputs of asset management. So, actually delivering performance for clients to help them save for retirement or meet their other investment goals within their constraints. Whereas CIPM program analyzes the outputs, and it's really focused on all the core things a money manager does, a PM will do, including portfolio construction, client engagement, and performance evaluation. In terms of what we cover, it really is the end-to-end workflow of performance measurement. So starting with measuring performance itself, and then going on to attribution. So asking how did we get the performance we're observing? Where were we overweight? Where were we underweight? And let's explain that performance against benchmark. We then move on to performance appraisal. So, is that due to skill or luck? Then there's performance presentation. So, making presentations to promote the fund. There's the GIP standards, Global Investment Performance Standards. And then finally, there's manager selection. That's how people use these reports and the NAV reports to actually consider their asset allocation and consider what funds they might want to invest in. So, the CIPM program really teaches this whole end to end flow of performance data in asset management. And it's underpinned by our strong ethics and professional standards that we're very well known for at CFA Institute. It is a two-level exam. So level one's really focusing on the performance measurement itself and the attribution. And level two focuses a bit more on performance appraisal. So looking at those numbers in order to figure out what actions to take and then to select managers as well, manager selection. So where, who you park the money with, essentially, which fund you invest in. In terms of the weights here on the right-hand side, you can see the topic weights for each of the two levels. And you'll see there, performance measurement is much heavier at level one. Performance attribution is in both, but manager selection is purely at level two. So as you go through the workflow from level one to level two, you move from performance measurement all the way through to manager selection at the end of the workflow. In terms of who does CIPM, here's the actual breakout by candidate job role types. No surprises, about a quarter of people taking CIPM are performance analysts. But you'll see they really kind of cover across the firm. You've got investment consultants there, 10%. Some PMs take it because they're interested in how they're being judged. So it really is not for any one particular job role, but the most popular job role is people in performance measurement. So performance analysts is a core to the candidate body. And then coming towards the end here, the exams themselves. So level one is a 3-hour, 100-question multiple choice quiz. And level two is an 80-question multiple choice quiz, again, 3 hours. I did level two. Gosh, that was back in 2018. It is challenging. It is tricky. It is hard. It's rigorous. And it's very mathematical. No apologies. This is performance measurement. So that's the way the two exams break out. And in terms of when you register, you do have everything you need to pass in terms of digital curriculum, flashcards, mock exam, and so on. So just to close out on this, the registration is open for the March window. There are two windows a year, March and then September. A registration closes 29th of Jan if you're interested in that window there. Typical study time reported by candidates is 155 hours, and it typically will take someone 18 months or so to get through both levels. So that's the CIPM designation, and all the guests today have that. So what I've done, I've gone ahead and selected several of your questions that I'm going to put to this panel. I think it'd be helpful before we go to the questions. I'd love to hear how each of you wound up doing performance measurement when you did it, when and why did the CIPM program and CFA program as relevant, and also typical day in your lives. So going to be tricky in 2 minutes, but let's kick off with you, Trisha.
I went to a vendor conference and there was a presenter there who spoke about performance measurement. And it was kind of an aha moment for me. Sitting in that session, I knew that performance measurement was something that I wanted to focus my career on. I went to industry conferences, participated in industry events as much as possible, and learned about a new certificate that was being developed by people in the industry called CGIPs. And so I followed that and it eventually became the CIPM. A typical day in my life, I manage the GIPS team at T. Rowe Price. I facilitate my team as they work with end users of composites in the firm, and there are many. Um, I give high level guidance on team projects, and I also lead the firm's GIPS compliance committee as well.
Well, I started at, as most did back in the day, out of Boston at one of the custodian banks. I started at State Street, kind of supporting investment managers. And at the time, I kind of wanted to understand, I wasn't as interested in performance as I was attribution. So I wanted to understand how our portfolios were being composed, what the end result was, how did we get there, and kind of that feedback loop into the investment process. So I had heard about the CFA exams, even through undergrad and then working my way up through State Street and operations and just how much of a challenge it was and how rewarding it was. After that, I think it was a couple of years, I started managing individuals on the performance team and I sat down with my boss at the time and we agreed that the CIPM was certainly the way to go. Just to understand the context there, it was a dedicated program to the field that we were in, and certainly having the firsthand knowledge to be able to speak to it to other members of the team. So that was 100% the right call to make at the time. And in my role today, it's more of looking at kind of the big picture items, helping out as needed, and kind of working with the managers and other individuals on my team to kind of to keep that all moving.
So similar to Trisha back in 2007, someone at our firm went to a conference, learned about CIPM, came back. He didn't want to do it himself. He asked me to do it. And anyway, it was probably one of the best things that happened in my career. Um, I just learned a ton about performance, a ton about GIPS, especially back then. GIPS was really heavily weighted on the exam. Um, the firm I was working for was not GIPS compliant. So that was kind of my first exposure to GIPS.
Good reminder that GIPS, I think GIPS used to be a 50% topic weight back in the day. And
Yeah,
now
there's a lot.
it's called
Yeah.
C GIPS. Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Wowzers. Very good. Stacey, over to you.
Out of college, I started at a small firm. And for those who work for small firms, and maybe for those who don't, if you say yes and you're very curious, you will get to learn a lot about a lot of different things. And I remember our chief compliance officer came in to my desk and said, "Hey, I'm having issues verifying like these returns. They're outliers." And I'm like, "Well, what are the returns? What is this for? So I took the list and I got back to her and I just kept saying, I want to learn more. I want to learn more. This is really interesting. I like the math. I like the storytelling. And then fast forward to when I was at Diamond Hill, ended up helping with verification, running and reviewing performance, attribution. And we didn't have a formalized performance function at the time. It was scattered among probably 5 different teams across the firm. So both instances, in the jobs, I had to like learn on the fly. And I was just looking for something more formal, like additional training, because I wanted to build out a performance function at Diamond Hill. So that led me to the CIPM, which I completed in 2016. I think it gave me the confidence I needed and the credibility to build that out. I would say there's a predictable unpredictability to a performance role. You'll have the ebb and flow of month and quarter end, but then you'll get the ad hoc requests of like, I want to use hypo performance or I want to do a carve out, and then the fun ensues. So I've always liked it. I while the supervisor role is great, I do like to get in the weeds when I have an opportunity.
So now what we're going to do, we're going to switch gears and move to the pre-submitted questions. Obviously, a lot of people here are very career focused on the webinar. And one of the questions is asking what skills you should focus on developing to work in performance measurement. So I guess, what's going to impress someone interviewing or looking at your resume in terms of what skills you built. Daryl, what do you think are kind of the top 3 skills that that young people should develop to get into the performance measurement industry?
One of the major functions, and we talked about this a little bit already, of the role is wearing multiple hats, and every day is a little bit different. So having a very broad based skill set. But I think for number one, just being someone who wants to learn, puts the initiative in, that hard work ethic, and the ability to solve problems. Another big one is math. You have to be comfortable with it, have a good understanding, and have an interest. I think there has to be some sort of an interest there in order to succeed with it. And then for a third one, Say general, a client centric and a client service attitude, having the skill set to communicate, quite well and understand the client service aspect goes a long way.
So I'm hearing a common theme here, which is being able to answer questions on the fly. Certainly seems to be one of the many things, the components of the job. So someone's asking here, what are the typical ways into a performance measurement team at the entry level?
Some of the common routes that I've seen at the firms that I've worked at is, of course, number one, um, operations, portfolio accounting. That's
Hmm.
it's essential that you have an understanding of how the securities are accounted for in a portfolio. And so that is just a really natural way to lead into performance. Another one, like I mentioned before, somebody who has background in data analytics
Hmm.
and then expresses interest in working in the performance measurement role, that would be a really great fit and good route into performance as well. Maybe another one is regulatory compliance. You don't need to be an SEC expert or other regulatory institutions around the world, but having interest or working within those groups could be a good fit for somebody coming into the performance world as well.
Lots of ways in by the sounds of it. Operations, accounting, data analytics. Um, Okay, so the question from someone here is, what does an employer look for in a potential candidate for performance measurement role, assuming they have no prior experience? And also, someone's asking, what advice do you have for college students looking to become a performance measurement analyst? So, Daryl, what is it you've looked for over the years?
Years ago, we would typically hire into the performance team for the entry level positions, either somebody that had a similar role, maybe at a custodian bank, or they were internal and they worked in operations, perhaps, a finance function, but they needed a couple years of experience, just to have like the basics. And so that's changed over the years for us, at least, in that we're able to hire and fill positions younger. And I think part of that has to do with the skill sets that individuals have coming out of college today are maybe more focused than what they were in the past. And again, demonstrating that they're willing to take on more, right? Work across
Mhm.
groups, that communication aspects and, a passion for investments. I think there are a lot of, courses out there today, certainly within, the finance track of undergraduate schools, but unfortunately, unless things have changed, they just gloss over performance evaluation, attribution, and measurement. Those are the things,
Mhm.
particularly for the getting into the field, understanding the curriculum that's already put together on a nice silver platter there. That's how to get ahead for sure.
That's a very good answer. Very interesting. So, someone's asking, what are the most common job roles you hire from into the performance function? So, Stacy, what sort of success stories have you seen over the years of people lateraling into performance from different functions?
Sure. Yeah. Some of this will echo a lot of what Daryl said and Trisha for sure. But, you know, f- we're a small firm. So I found that those coming from operations roles make great performance analysts. They get the life cycle of trade, they get where data issues can originate. They've likely dealt with corporate actions, which we've already heard about on this call. So, and probably all love and
Yeah.
appreciate. So a couple of years ago, I was overseeing the investment operations function, and that included investment performance at the time. And there was an associate I was working with. He was a few years out of school. He was interested in exploring the different career paths for him. So we had him meet with different folks in the firm and you know, interesting enough, we needed an extra set of hands on the performance function. So I said, "Hey, would you want to help out the team? It maybe could lead something. It might not, but it would at least give you some hands-on experience." And that role grew. And fast forward, he's now on the performance team. I think as a result of his operations work, he's brought some great relationships with teams like trading and client service. He understands the data flow between systems. He's had an easier time connecting the dots. I think, to go back to the curiosity theme, I found it is significantly harder to train somebody to ask, why is it that way, than training somebody on here's how a trade flows through a system. So he's come a long way. I mean, he is the one that's always going to ask why. He set up some Power BI scorecards to help with some investment analytics data quality. So I think he's been a really good kind of story of how you can make that jump.
Another software package for folks there, Power BI. And it sounds like from two of you now have mentioned corporate actions. So let's wrap up by talking about the CIPM program and CFA program, how they relate to performance measurement. And actually, I'm going to call on our dual nationals, so Sean and Daryl here. So someone's asking, if I want to get into a performance team, which program should I start, CFA program or CIPM program? So Sean, you got both. What are your thoughts?
I think they're both great, really. I mean, we on my team, I have people doing both, and I think if you're really excited about one of them, I would say go for that one. If someone is really excited about CFA, I wouldn't say no, 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 no. You got to do CIPM first, because you're going to learn a ton either way. For people on my team that they've already been working in performance for a while, they know they want to stay in performance, and they don't necessarily want to do both. CIPM would definitely be the path I'd suggest. But for anyone that's kind of thinking longer term, maybe they want to broaden into other areas, CFA obviously is a bit more broad and would give them that experience.